Should we mute ourselves?
No, that's okay, Farzana ma'am. That's okay. Hello, everyone. A very good evening to all of you. So, today we are here to talk about the National Education Policy. And with me, I have three esteemed guests. And I will not say esteemed, but enthusiastic is the correct word because each one of these guests is one above the other. So, I'm sure when we go through the discussion, you all will agree to this. So, let's welcome on this panel Farzana Dohadwala, ma'am. Good evening, Farzana, ma'am.
Good evening.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for giving your valuable time to us. Then on
Our
this
pleasure.
panel, thank you, ma'am. Then on this panel, we have Fatima Agarkar, ma'am. Hello, ma'am. And last but not the least, the only male member on this panel, Colonel Shekhar. Perfect. So, the topic today that we have picked up to talk is a wonderful topic, decoding the national education policy. So, basically, 1 hour or more than 1 hour is a very less time to talk about this policy, but let's try to make the best out of the time that we have. So, for the first question, each one of you will have 5 minutes, and the order will be Fatima, Farzana ma'am and Colonel Shekhar for the first question. The first question will be same for all of you. Every one of us have some or the other understanding about this policy because since this policy has come into existence, everybody is talking about this policy. There are a lot of questions that are coming up कि policy का implementation कैसे होगा, कुछ चीजें बहुत अच्छी हैं, कुछ चीजों में कुछ problem है. So everyone has a lot of questions. So my first question to the panel is, Fatima, to you is, what is your understanding about the NEP 2020? Fatima?
So I have 5 minutes, and Harsha, you've not put me under any pressure. Because to decode a document that's 64 pages after 34 years means I have to do an extraordinary job. I'm hoping, like an opening bowler's wife, I can at least get the ball out there and bowl some yorkers in it.
A pretty good one at that.
So maybe this is a bit personal. I think each one of us, and I'm waiting to hear from my fellow panelists as well, is that we're going to take salient features from it. It's a comprehensive document. It is our national education policy. It is finally something that has now recognized, in my mind, 5 things. First of all, we needed a structure. We needed an induction of early childhood education as an important investment if you analyze economies that have gone through man-made or natural calamities. The one sector that augments growth is early childhood education. So maybe after 34 years, it's made its debut. We welcome that, but that's created confusion because suddenly everyone's sitting with this structure and saying, oh, but why is it 5 years? Why is it 3 years? Why is it, another 3 years? And then 4 years. It's very simple. This is what progressive schools, international schools, have been doing for the last 20 decades. Finally, it's the government saying we need to bridge the gap. Government-aided schools needed that structure in a formal way to say, guys, we have to have some common core standards. So this structure is based on child psychology. This structure is based on evidence of something not working in our system with 10 to 2. We need to give each age group that much more time because what is the national education policy talking about? That every child matters. Now, every child is different. So you cannot standardize. It must be customized. So one is you figure out the structure. So parents, please don't get agitated. Teachers don't. It's simply a structure to say some parts of a child's learning journey need more time. The next point is fundamentally the last 10 to 12 years have been spent researching problems in Indian education. I don't need to give you PISA statistics. I don't need to tell you how we never compete on any competitive exam. It's simply because maybe our content need to be rethought. National education policies are policies that are meant to be upgraded every 2 years because the dynamics change, variables change. So this is not a surprise. This is not something that hadn't been done before. So if someone tells me, oh, it's radically different, it's not. It's simply a beautiful, seamless extension. And it's progressive because you have to be, did we know in 2019 when this draft was circulated, we would be going through a pandemic and we would be talking about blended learning? We spoke about it in conferences, but this reality for 6 months, no one anticipated. So then you're talking about what we're teaching our children. Is it outdated? I'm going to say yes. A large part of it is, it needs a rethink. If we have to be a global economy and compete with the best in class in the world, we need to upgrade. We can't be embracing technology. It should have been part of our world since we spoke about it since 2000. So then they're talking about core subjects. Literacy, numeracy becomes fundamental. We've kept away from it because we wanted everything knowledge-based and let's test their memory. We never spoke about understanding, critical thinking, communication, creativity. So that is what this national education policy has brought a focus to, saying, what are we teaching our children and what's going to be core? Okay. Now, when you do this, when you define a syllabus or a curriculum or content or whatever word people want to use, how are you going to teach it? What is going to make that child learn? One size does not fit all. It's our reality, and that's emerged. Okay, so when we said, okay, it has to be experiential learning, you know, all these glamorous words, I keep saying that, we also confuse people. It's basically breaking information down so that every child understands it and respects it. I'm not expecting every child to love math. You know, there's that joke, right? One kid has asked a teacher, I have to learn all 9 subjects, but 9 teachers are teaching me. That means you are also not specialized in all the subjects and you're still expecting me to be a specialist. So it's made us think it's child-centric, it's learner-centric. And I know I have to get to the point quickly because I want to hear it from the other panelists. Then it's addressed what's very important to us personally, and I know my fellow panelists will agree, teacher education, recruitment, and in-service training. It is the least respected part of an educational system.
True.
You believe that once you're a teacher, you're always a teacher, but times have changed. Today, the kids are saying, ma'am, please unmute yourself. We can't hear you. You know, so the children have embraced. We haven't, because we belong to a different era, and it's okay to accept it. And it's okay to upgrade with time. So the last and the most important one is the flexibility, which I think B.Ed has now got. We are finally, as a country, you know, inviting talent from other sectors because we're making it flexible. We're saying, okay, it's 4 years if you've only been in grade 12, and that's all you have. But you know what? If you have a master's in commerce or in humanities, you should be able to do this very quickly because these are adaptable skills. So I think those are the positives. Of course, I'm a sportsman's wife. I'm going to say sport and co-curriculars, big integration. We're talking about inclusive education. We're also talking about vocational subjects for the middle school, which I always believe is a problem for any educational system. Forget national or international, state or private. The fact is that is a big area that we miss out on. That's been spoken about. My only worry is, why was the private sector almost marginalized? You know, they were the ones who spoke about all these things, and they've been doing it. You've borrowed from them, so give them that little bit of respect. And let's face it, 52% is in the private sector. That means their enrollments are more. All in all, according to me, the national education policy has ticked a lot of the boxes. Point is, this is a concurrent subject. Legally, this lies with the center and the state. That means you have to have two collaborative machinery in place to implement it. And I know Farzana ma'am has said this on some webinar. 10 years. Are we being a bit ambitious? Because we'll have to attack it step by step. It's just that we shouldn't judge too quickly. Sorry, but media does play a role in influencing us, because suddenly mother tongue became a big issue. Guys, it's part of our country. We are a country with regional diversity, and that's the beauty. How can that be incorporated? So let's not jump the gun. Let's wait for our states to start or rather suggesting protocols for implementation. Then let's go to war. We don't need to jump. We need to receive information, study it, evaluate it. It might just be too premature for some states. Some states are ahead in terms of implementation. I think we should wait for policy decisions. But I think webinars like this create an awareness, so that in case they're thinking of implementation in a particular way, maybe our feedback, our communication can reach these homes. What's important is a collaborative effort. Now, Harsha, that is a trick, a key. That is what everyone's waiting to see, how that pans out. I hope I finished in time.
Yeah, wonderfully put together, Fatima. I must really say that to comprehend that 65 pages into 5 minutes, to sum it up, it's really difficult. But you touched each and every point that was mentioned in the policy. Because since we started talking about the policy, there are a lot of questions that came up. As you talked about the mother tongue, which became a big issue. So there are other questions also coming up. If the audience want to ask anything, I will request the audience to kindly post it in the comment section box. And if we have time, we may definitely pick up that question. So now I will welcome Farzana ma'am. Farzana ma'am, your 5 minutes start now.
So good evening, everybody. For me, the NEP has been a step towards freedom in education. I have been in this education vertical for more than 25 years. And for me, this is first time I am seeing a freedom. Okay. The policy is a visionary document. We all know about it. It wants to make India a global knowledge superpower. And so to make it a superpower, I think I'm going to talk about 10 things which they have enumerated in that 64-page document. Okay. The first is very important is the universalization of education. You know, we always talk about the GDPs. Never ever have we talked about the GERs. That's the general enrollment ratio. We need in our country, because we are the second largest population in the world, that all our children, at least till middle school, attend school. We have children on the streets not studying. Okay, so that's the first thing. And the aim of this visionary document is by 2030, there would be a universalization of education. Second point is, and it's surprising, when I read it, I was surprised. There are more than 2 crore children, school-going children, who are not in the school system. But now with this open schooling system that they think they want to start, so those who are in far places, or they are in certain parts of the country where they can't reach a school or they don't have a school, they can do the open school. A third point is, of course, what Fatima had touched about, is the new structure. We are going to go away with the 10+2, and now it's going to be, as everybody knows, the 5+3+3+4 structure. Very, very important, as Fatima also said, is now we are going to get into the pre-primary, which was always a group of people running it as per their whims and fancies. Now it's coming under the purview, and it's going to be 3 years till, means nursery to grade 2 in one big bracket. Now, another important thing is the foundation literacy and numeracy. It's so important. It's so important, friends. Also remember, now in the higher, we are talking about school education, but now school is going to go into 11th and 12th as per the NEP. So this There will be no separation of a commerce, arts, and science stream. And that is something which I'm very excited about, because all the international programs which I have helped bring into the country, that was the one seller point. It was the USP, that the child did not have to choose so early in the school what would be their career choices. Give them a basket of subjects and let them pick up. They may think I want to be an engineer, which most parents want, or a doctor. They may just turn out to be a cricketer, or maybe a musician. So give them a variety of subjects. The next point which I would like to talk about is the holistic development. And that's what is going to change even in our report cards. Our report cards were very academic. Nothing about the co-curricular and the holistic development. So that is going to be added now. Teaching, you talk of these big, high, lofty ideals of child-centered education. If our teachers are struggling still with the didactic mode of teaching and learning, it's not going to help us. So that's a very big move of trying to bring about a change in the B.Ed structure. I have done a B.Ed, and friends, to tell you honestly, I used to be on the last bench. I was never interested because it used to be so much theory, and I would say, where the hell am I going to put it? I used to attend IB workshops, and I used to learn so much more there. So finally, we are going to have some sort of vitality pushed into our B.Ed programs, hopefully. And the last but not the least is, of course, the vocational education, the internships. This is something which international schools always did, of bringing in internship. This is something which is now coming in our national system. It's good to try different careers and then decide I like it or I don't like it, So it's not the parent, and today's child is such a free child. He's getting all these opportunities. So I hope our state is able to implement it in true spirit, and we get a great, great implementation. But it's going to take time. So be patient, friends. Thank
you so much, Farzana ma'am. And very rightly, I really like the word that you spoke, that NEP 2020 is a visionary document. So I think a lot of things to come ahead in our way also when we try implementing this policy. So thank you so much, Farzana ma'am, for those 10 points. Lovely. I'm sure we all are going to learn a lot out of it. Now it's the time for me to invite the only male member on this panel, Colonel Shekhar. Sir, all to you.
Right. Thank you. Am I audible? Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes.
Yeah. It's always a challenge to talk after two. I've used the term a little too often, two formidable ladies. One said 5 points, another said 10 points. So what is left for me to say? Yes. Yeah, but I'll take a slightly more critical view. I'll start off with my first point. This is what the nth webinar I am part of, luckily not as a moderator. So my first question to myself and to Harsha was, why is she doing it again? The answer came up last week when, for a group of schools somewhere in the south, I interviewed 2 principals, very senior people. And I asked them, what is your take on the national education policy? सर ज्यादा कोई फर्क है नहीं, चलो चलता है, देखते हैं, बाद में देखते हैं, अभी कोविड की बात करते हैं. The other one said, how relevant is NEP, sir? Not much of a change. I looked at myself, I thought, who is this? मैं तो सही बोल रहा हूँ, is it some ghost of mine talking? And that was the moment I realized that these webinars matter, because these were senior principals with substantial degrees and experience to their name. And further to it, I visited a school where I am working as a mentor, and I said, before I start my workshop to all 60 teachers, I am going to ask you 5 questions on the NEP. A pin drop would have been less silent. It was just quiet. Nobody wanted me to ask those questions. So firstly, thank you for having me. Thank you for having these workshops, these interactive sessions. It makes a difference. The second part of it is, as you have covered all of it, the army guy in me always talks about execution. We always say that once the first bullet is fired, all your training documents, all your training, everything goes out of the window. So my consistent worry about this, and having seen through, I have a little more gray hair. I don't know whether Farzana ma'am will agree with me or not. I have seen in 1986, post Rajiv Gandhi, the huge amount of people were completely over the moon saying that this is next to Aristotle and Socrates, the kind of program we have. And 92, we have had an outstanding NCF in 2005. We know where we are today. So my point is, the document ticks, as Mrs. Agarkar said, ticks all the right boxes. It's a nice document to read. It is politically correct. It talks about all the right things. Dr. Kasturi Rangan is an old hand at doing this. All those things have come about. And further to it, this is even more interesting. I got messages during the first 15 days after the NEP came about, considering me as an expert. How expert I am, God only knows. They said, sir, we believe that school education now is going to be 11 years. They total 5 plus 3 plus 3 and some number. They said now schooling is reduced by 1 year. This became a viral WhatsApp forward. When I said this is wrong, they called me, you are a fool, you have not read the policy. I reread the policy 5 times to confirm that. So that is the, and I'll come back to this point at the end of it. So firstly, other than Riya Chakravarti and Kangana Ranaut, the Indian media has had possibly in the English media about 4 discussions on the national education policy, 400 on Riya Chakravarti. That tells you how the media looks at it. I'm looking at the English, Hindi, Tamil and Malayalam media. They have, so that's one part. So there is a challenge in doing that. The execution part. This is the same India which has to do that, the same bureaucrats. I see a lot of good signs about it, but I am also worried that the backward integration from the colleges, the flexible structures, 1 more year coming in, to the scholastic structures and right down to the early childhood. I'm thrilled that early childhood has been given the importance. 10 years from now, hopefully the early childhood teacher will be more important than the +2 physics teacher. That's one dream, hopefully will happen. The challenge is clearly the mafia which is on the ground, as eloquently described by Mr. Anil Swaroop. The teacher training establishments in India are a complete mafiostic disaster. We must understand that. And that is where this education policy has focused and used some harsh words about it. Yes, we require all those things to happen. But now, during these present and post-COVID conditions, where states are not getting their GST due, 6% GDP, Goddess Saraswati will think twice before becoming the Education Minister of India. There is no money available. Therefore, coming along with what Fatima said, get the private sector involved. 52% of the students are here. So therefore, the challenge to this policy, beyond what my distinguished co-panelists have said, is the state governments have to come on board, and for which hopefully the national opposition parties will understand that this is one whole where India has to move forward. I am worried seriously together. That's right. Seriously, I'm worried as what's happening in the US. And this is a real live example. You go to the New York Times and check out history books. The state of Texas, the state of California, one is ruled by the Republicans, one is ruled by the Democrats. The same text-making company has prepared 2 different textbooks for history. Can you imagine that happening? Because we know that has happened in Rajasthan. Vasundhara Raje comes, one set. Ashok Gehlot comes, another set. Pan-India understanding that this policy, the concept requires to be what it is. We have to create 4 quality national curriculum framework, and the 250 textbooks must ensure that whether Akbar or Aurangzeb are good or bad, give alternate viewpoints and let the student, through his or her own thought processes, develop it. My worry is that the present system, where if you are pro-Modi, you are an urban Nazi. If you are anti-Modi, you are an urban Naxal. Does not help. And this is where I disagree with Farzana ma'am. The sense of freedom. The policy tells you be more free. Although the policy also uses must, will, maybe, if possible. I counted 20 and left it after that. So that gives flexibility for the bureaucrats in the state to reinterpret it to their advantage. So pan-India, everyone has to agree to it, to implement it with the spirit of the document, work with the private sector, encourage and make sure that the state government schools and colleges, the 15 lakh of them, go ahead. And the last point, to move ahead with the GER. Presently, the GER for higher education I take up is 26.5. We want to make it 50% by 2035. That means over the next 15 years, we have to create one university every week. One university every week. How the heck are we going to do it? So let's now stop considering the NEP as a new bride and now get the bride and the bridegroom to start working. I rest my case here. Back to you, the moderator.
Wonderfully said, Colonel Shekhar. So in the first phase, we are trying to decode the national education policy. And I'm sure in the next phase, we are going to conduct webinars wherein we'll be talking about the implementation. Because making a document and implementing are two different things, you know. So I think let's understand more from Farzana ma'am. Farzana ma'am, my first question to you is, you have 3 minutes to answer this question, Farzana ma'am. What changes have been made?
Huh? She's very strict. She doesn't give us 30 seconds more.
Okay, Farzana ma'am, my question to you is, what changes have been made in the school curriculum and pedagogy in this NEP 2020?
Colonel Shekhar, to start with, about the freedom, yes, I still believe that as Indians, we will do something which will become make us a superpower. Let's have that faith. Let's not be very critical, because every time if we are negative, the positivity does not shine into us. So I'm
an army man. I always believe we will win, but I am also a realist. We have to look at it. If today I'm going to say that we are going to defeat China in 24 hours, I am living in a mythological world. Yes, we'll do it right, but my only point is on the existing freedom. I agree with you on that aspect. Thank you.
Thank you. So coming back to school curriculum and pedagogy. The first good point that they have brought in is, as we've all said earlier, is that schooling starts from the age of 3 years now. And this is under the official umbrella, not the mushrooming of the pre-primary small classes and institutes. Okay. Now, the important thing is that there are going to be these stages. The foundational stage, where the pedagogy is going to be, that's the nursery to grade 2. The pedagogy will be play and activity based. In the next stage, which is the preparatory stage, that's the grades 3 to 5. Play has to continue, because see, this is one thing which was not very common. I'm not talking about the private institutes. I am talking about the government schools. For them, play was considered as a time pass. So I would really feel that this preparatory stage laid down by the NEP, that play is important, because through play there will be discovery. You know, where are we talking about discovery learning? It happens in international schools. I want it down in every municipal school, because every child can become a star. Every child has the potential. and also activity based and interactive education. You know, currently, because of the population explosion in our country, we have big numbers, so 60 kids in a class. I don't blame the teacher. There is a didactic mode of teaching. Where can the inquiry come in? So somehow, hopefully, with this teacher training that we hope will happen, they will be able to have some group dynamics in their classrooms. The middle stage, those years are so important. That's grade 6 to 8. You know, those poor things are lost. They are not babies and they are not board exam years. This is the period for experiential learning. In science, math, social studies, humanities, arts, because this will create that broad platform in the child's mind of what he is enjoying and what should he choose as a subject. And the last, which is the 9 to 12, which they call the secondary stage, is a multidisciplinary study. And where there will be greater critical thinking. So all the 21st century skills are going to get imbibed through the stages, but it will have greater focus in the secondary stage, where student will get a choice of subjects, flexibility, and lot of out-of-the-box thinking. That's the first thing. The second thing, of course, has been spoken about, and I have got teen mails. Medium of instruction is the mother tongue. What is going to happen? At that time, I quote and I tell them that, you know, International Baccalaureate, the IB, they support mother tongue so much. And they say that if your children, you have 3 mother tongues or 5 mother tongues in your classroom, you need to get guest speakers so the mother tongue development continues. So imagine a board based in Switzerland is talking about mother tongue, and we based in India are only talking about English. Are we still a British colony? Is what I ask everybody. So I think, and many of our children, majority of our children understand the mother tongue. So a science concept or a maths concept, if taught in the mother tongue, it will be in a jiffy, they will understand it. So I'm very happy with this. Another point is, beginning with mathematics, they're going to offer subjects at 2 levels, which is excellent. Because I remember when I did my 11th standard SSC, we had a science at 2 levels, maths at 2 levels. Based on what my career choices I can choose. Why push a child? And why ask a child to drop maths? Maths is important in his life. One other great point which I think that which will help in our curriculum and in our pedagogy is those 10 bagless days in school and internships. This is very important. Again, there is a gap between the lip and the cup. It will, it's being said, it's going to happen. It's now on individual schools, because as a state government, they're going to say 10 bagless days. But what is the school going to do? That is where some more teacher training, some more workshops should be held for them to understand what it means and what is this informal internship. Board exams. My God. I remember when my son did board exams, the whole house was on curfew. No TV, no this, no noise. It's a board exam. When I think back about it, I feel like laughing, you know. Why was it so important in his life? Because who cares? Because every child moves in his own path, in his own passion. So I'm feeling happy that now they have, but I hope they don't make it very restrictive and prescriptive. They should test for conceptual understanding rather than content. Grade 3, 5, and 8. Those are the 3 classes where the government, the NFP has suggested we should have some, steps in the to assess the children, which is important, because now if we are spending so much of our money, budget amount allocated into education, and if our teachers are not doing a good job, there is some gap and we need to fill that gap. Another very important, based on this, is the assessment. We are now, and that is what they've said, it has to have a more formative style which encourages the HOTS, the higher order thinking, critical thinking, conceptual clarity. It should not be a mugging exam where I mug, or there's most likely 20 questions available in the market. I study that and I get passed. So that's where I come back to that point, that those who stood in the first 5 ranks in school, today they are nowhere in their professional careers because
True.
they were not ready for the world. They did not have the real life skills. They were, I would say, nerds who kept learning and reading, but there was no outside holistic knowledge, you know. Another good thing, and I hope this organization works for what it is being created, is Parak. That's the performance assessment review and analysis of knowledge. I hope Parak is able to do a job and bring about a change in this board exam. I don't know how it's going to be done, because again, I'll give you an example of how international exams are held. You know, you can be learning the same, any text you want to read. There's no prescriptive textbooks. They would say, what is the role of women in all the literature that you have read? You could have read Shakespeare, I could have read something else, and we can still talk about the role of women. And that's where you give the child the wider window. You know? So I hope Parak is able to bring about this change in our exams, board exams, whenever. Also, the movement of the NEP is moving from summative to formative assessments more, which is important, you know, because it's better to do formative, because the assessment is also of the teacher. I teach, I do a formative assessment. If the kids have not done well, means I have failed in my teaching. I need to redo it. So that's where formative is very important. Competency-based also promotes learning and development. And of course, testing for higher order skills. If we want many Kalamji amongst us, this higher order skill has to be developed. He went to a simple school, simple teachers, but look at the way he has thought out of the box, because he was motivated enough. So we need to give that provocation, that motivation to our children to be able to do well. The new structure also promotes definitely assessment for learning, which acknowledges that individual students learn in different ways. These initiatives hopefully will bring about teacher empowerment, checks and measures. There should be rubrics and guidelines so that one shoe size does not fit all. We need to be on that point, you know. So with that, over to you, Harsha.
Thank you so much, Farzana ma'am. There is one question from the audience, but how international schools will teach into mother tongue in India?
Yes, they will. See, till date, the government has not come up with any notification that everybody has to teach in the mother tongue. What I would suggest, what is going to happen is, and that's something which many of our schools follow, even in international schools, that when the child comes into nursery and the child will say, you know, Miss, mujhe washroom jana hai. So English and Hindi and Gujarati mixed. And the teacher will say, wow, you want to go? Okay, just you can go to the washroom. So she will not say that speaking in Hindi, Marathi, English, Gujarati is no, you only speak in English with me. But she will provide the language of English also to the child. So if he doesn't understand a particular concept, the teacher, we have all multilingual teachers, you know. So in a school, there is someone speaking Gujarati, Marathi, Hindi. That teacher would be able to explain the concept. So I think, I am not saying it will be teaching totally in the mother tongue, but use the mother tongue to help the learning happen across all types of schools. And that I hope the state government puts it into implementation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Farzana ma'am. Fatima, it's your turn now. There are a few questions for you, Farzana ma'am. Towards the end, we'll pick up those questions. So Fatima, the question to you is, NEP merges Indian values and cultures and yet promises to meet up the global standards. Kindly explain, how does this happen in NEP 2020? You are on mute, Fatima. Yes.
Well, this had to happen in a webinar, right? And it had to be Fatima who does this. I think no country today can be divorced from each other. It is one world. What happens in India affects America. What happens in China affects India. We need our children waking up to the fact that they are Indian citizens, part of a global economy. We have wealth of information. We have numeracy as our right. We invented a lot. We forgot that. And then we borrowed it back from the international pedagogies, simply because we forget what's inherently beautiful about us. So the policy is talking about the fact that we had the Gurukul system. We had methodologies that were working even back then. Jijubai Badeka, I mean, pioneering educationalists who challenged even Maria Montessori to say, I don't agree with how you're structuring the curriculum. So I'm just going to say that there's a lot of inherent strength in our country, and I believe that as well. I think we need to start recognizing what is inherently ours, celebrate it, but also recognize we're a part of the bigger picture. So then I can't be operating as an isolated country. I need to merge. This is what the document's talking about, which is why the love for mother tongues. So if I could just extend the point that Farzana ma'am was making, is that, you know what, parents will have to come in. Because everything will have to be graded for them. Marathi, maybe you didn't get 4 on 4. English may also you didn't get 4 on 4. Hindi may also you not got 4 on 4. So we are worried about assessments, and we're not worried about the fact that there is a process. It's listening, speaking, reading, writing. You know, there are some natural orators, there are some natural writers. I don't know anyone who has it all. And I think it's about time we recognize as a country we're individuals. So I think the point of the policy in what Farzana ma'am described it as a visionary document is to bring attention to the core Indian values. They are about life skills. They are about decision making. They are about independence. They are about accountability. They are about a middle schooler figuring out his homework without his mother checking on WhatsApp. Ke kya hua bhai aaj class mein? He's 14. How can someone be checking on? So it's taking away, but this is where parents come in. Graded subject, assessed in a report card. This is where Farzana ma'am pointed out. Assessments are going to be crucial. What kind of rubric do we give the teacher? How we orient the parents to understand it's okay if I'm a great reader, but I may not excel in writing. Don't crucify me for that because my skill sets lie somewhere else. So us being a part of the global economy is also about technology. We're talking about coding and digitalization. We have 23% penetration at the moment. We cannot be left behind. If we have to be that global power, if we have to compete, we need technology. And guys, accept it or not, I understand the Delhi High Court today has also had a ruling, private players participate. This is where I felt the national education policy could have put a bit of onus on the private players to say, okay, bring in your experience because you've done it. Health, you know, so where can we be collaborative? If you have to be a global economy, it cannot be a monopolistic situation. You're going to have different mindsets. You're going to have different perspectives. That's when the best comes out. And that's when you start competing. You can't control everything in India. So I like the fact that we're saying global. We control our Indian values, but we're thinking globally because this is where our kids will eventually be at. And, you know, Farzana ma'am has beautifully pointed out all the other points. Just, again, the state versus center interpretation. So this is a directive from the center. I may not like it, so I won't put it. We'll have two different states talking about two different assessment patterns. Worrying, because I cannot have two Indians then being assessed differently. So that's the complication. That's why collaborative forces. Shekhar, I'd love to hear your views.
Yeah, it's what you have said is provocative, and I'll just add on to that. And I always think that there is something in what you say, and please take my opposite point of view. A student in Ladakh scores 75% in his class 10 board exams. A student in Mumbai scores 85, which is better if you're having the same standardized systems? How do we read a student where for more than 3 months there is winter, teachers are not available? The context
Which is why
of
Prasanna
learning
ma'am
really
said the
matters.
formative is
So
going to be now important. So it's not going to be the summative
fair.
point blank. I'm hoping it's not.
Agreed. Yeah. I am not. See, I keep hearing this one standardized template everywhere. Often I see this, I look at it, and I get very worried about it. It fits in very well with a private corporate system where one size fits for all works. I'm not commenting on what you said. I understand where you are coming from. But my biggest worry is this diversity in terms of what India is. Say, I am learning Hindi. I am born in Kerala. My mother tongue is Tamil. I learned Malayalam, been all over India. My understanding of Hindi would be very different from the understanding of a person who is born and brought up in Uttar Pradesh and Lucknow.
So those graded assessment. Like I will be judged for my ability to contribute. Especially if I'm in a transferable job.
But that, but my own point, it often happens is, when it comes down to implementation, what happens is we all require, when we look for a certain kind of standardization, in many ways. So I am looking for how Parak is going to work about, but I am very concerned that the thing which I've always got worried about is you visit a Starbucks store, cup of coffee. Farzana ma'am, Agarkar both go. One girl gives you that cup of coffee with a smile. The other one, the same cup of coffee from the same dabba, gives you without a smile. Who gets the better tip? The one who smiles. In a scholastic environment, in an assessment, both students must get the same grading. The fairness of the system lies in that. And that is a fundamental challenge in a highly emotion-driven country where a lot of things happen. And I've seen this happen on a regular basis, especially the change from the assessment, which is one size fits for all, one exam for everyone. We know what it is. Now we are online. It can be a debate. It can be a declamation. It can be a presentation. It can be a video. So I am all for what you're saying. I'm getting to the place where you are, but I am also concerned that the way the systems are going ahead, and I'm also concerned that there is almost a dreamlike feeling that one centralized control system will work better. The UGC, all this are going to come up. My bigger worry is one huge bloated bureaucracy will impact on us much worse. And on the discussions,
the governance is a concern for all of us, sir. It is a concern for all of us.
It is a super huge concern because we have seen this happen. I thought I'm part of the army bureaucracy, things go slower. I moved into the private sector, believing that tomorrow morning things will happen. And I got fed up with the corporate board meetings, which beat around the best bush in town. So we leave it. And I just want to add a couple of things before I go to the next question. India has
But Colonel, sir, I have to say something. If you look at the public schools globally, and if we actually deep dive into what Australia has managed to do, what America, and of course, America gets criticized for its Common Core standards, but there is a sense of flexibility in their grading, which needs to come in. So we're hoping that
I'm coming to that. You have just got it. I'm coming to that only. I just cover. We have 27,000 CBSE schools, 2,500 ICSE schools, 1,000 real or somewhat fraudulent international schools. So the total number comes to about 21,000. There are a lot of people who claim that they are international. They might bring one Chaika Pati from London, it becomes international. We leave it at that. I'm saying the total number is about 30 to 32,000 out of our 16 lakh schools. So this policy, as somebody from the NCERT shared with me in a webinar, is much more focused on the masses in terms of the teachers. Yeah, that is one. The second aspect is we have come a long way.
It's driven to get more public enrollment, sir. It's a very
public
clear
enrollment.
document.
Yeah, and that is why in this post-COVID scenario, the skills of private schools, no government is interested in, because they are getting better numbers, whether it is Punjab or in Kerala. We'll come to that. We were a population of 38 crores in 1947. Our literacy rates were 12 and 9%, 12 overall, 9% for women. Our population is 138 crores. We have come closer to 70%. We have moved a great deal forward. Now we have to make that huge leap in terms of what we have to do. But the thinking I've always had is, let us think about the Bhagavad Gita. Even that itself, the Gita or the Bhagavad Gita. What is the Bhagavad Gita? Arjuna is spoken to by Krishna in the midst of a battlefield. What Krishna meant, Arjuna asks questions. Sanjaya hears it, describes it to Dhritarashtra, who listens, who doesn't speak anything. So the interpretations of the Gita are different. So similarly, this national education policy, as long as we get the core of it right, in terms of questioning children, because my big worry is this question, Fatima disagreeing with Shekhar, Shekhar disagreeing with Fatima, is based on one undeniable basic fact: mutual respect. I have enormous trust in what you say. Hopefully you have the same in me. And that is where my final point comes up. In the Indian Armed Forces, within, the trust factor is huge. I'm Colonel Shekhar, I'm an officer. The inbuilt trust comes through, and I'll share a story before I hand it back to Harsha. I was in Sri Lanka. We were moving into an LTT area. I didn't know that. I was a very young. My hair was much more black. I had less of this. So I went in. I was to pick up a bank manager during the curfew time, and he was not willing to come. So I was moving. I had men, about 30 men with me with AK-47s. After I moved ahead, my junior commissioned officer stopped my vehicle and he said to me, "Saab, aap galti kar rahe ho, aage nahi jana hai." I said, "Jana hai." "Saab, aap galti kar rahe ho, jana nahi hai, yahan bahut LTT hai, nahi jana hai, ye mera hukum hai." "ठीक है साहब, आपका गाड़ी पीछे रहेगा, मैं आगे जाऊंगा क्योंकि आपकी जिंदगी हमारे से भी ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है." Everything went well. That concept does not exist in the civilian street. No offense to you, even more so in the academia. Fatima Agarkar is my principal. I disagree with her, but if she passes an order, I have to implement it as long as she doesn't tell me to do rape or murder. Our problem is that Fatima, the principal, has taken a decision. Shekhar, the person, does not like it. I become the greatest passive resistor this side of Ganga to ensure it doesn't happen. So there are multiple vested interests into the system, which have, if you see how our quota story was torpedoed, quota in the Ramaswamy committee, 20% of class 10, 30% of class 12, 20 and 30% of the entrance as well as aptitude tests. It was wonderful. The quota lobby came in, and finally what we have, instead of one exam, we have two exams. They started making double the money. So our challenge is pan-India politicians have to get together, state government to understand the core of it, not talk Tamil, Malayalam, etc. And finally, our independence is, the linchpin around it is our interdependence. If I do not wear a mask and go into Farzana madam's home, I'm not only hurting myself, I'm hurting her. This goes against the present hour thinking of I, me, myself. So it's much broader in concept. I believe in the goodness of the policy, but I am extremely concerned as to how it will get implemented in terms of the fierce resistance the structures would have, because there is so much in it for them to continue in the same existing manner, because that is what has given them results. Back to you.
Which is why the webinars like this are forums to create conversations that can then be escalated to the higher level, to say, before you start implementing it as an SOP, these are the roadblocks. Think about this. These are the these are the challenges. Shekharji, I have no doubt we can't achieve everything. I think as educators, long enough in this industry, we know. But I think the ray of hope is what we're hoping for. I have a 15-year-old.
I'm still an idealist. I'm still an idealist. We all have to go into, and I'm use a army metaphor. We have to go into war believing that we'll win everything. That's the way I think. Right. Yes, there will be challenges. I believe that this policy will have, but I am also worried that in terms of the policy, COVID has come in and it will take away at least 3 to 5 years of our time because of the way this is going about. So I'm concerned about that, the money and the part. The second part is, the other part of it is 50% college going, college completed students we want by 2035, whereas the academia industry relationship, where what the academia wants comes into, hopefully it comes into later. We are having 70% of our engineers not fit for a job. I've interviewed many of them. They wouldn't know how to hold a tester despite being electrical engineers. So we are looking at many of the quantitative aspects. We have also got to really focus on teachers training and getting the right people on the job. I'm worried that with money in short supply, with so much money going into defense, we may not have the resource. That's where the private sector has to come into play.
Sorry, Harsha, I threw you off a bit with my question.
Yeah. Our joint apologies are apologies. Sorry.
No, that's completely okay. But Colonel Shekhar, your worry about implementation, I think the only answer that I see is discussions like these, understanding of the policy to its core, I think is the only answer which will take us on the path of its implementation. Because you read the policy for one time, you read it for the second time, you read it for the third time, there is a difference in understanding. So I think forums like these, discussions like these will definitely create awareness and will touch on some points which will keep the people thinking. So I think that first...
I just want to add one point.
Yes, ma'am.
In 34 years, we did not move. So now that we've finally moved, even if we were to we are able to do 30% of what the policy is dreaming to do, we are still better off. Exactly. Rather than nothing, we have something in our bag. That's the positivity in me that looks at kuch to hoga na.
Yes. And Farzana ma'am, let me tell you that last week we just had a meeting of a few educators, and I will not, feel shameful to tell that we were 15 educators who were talking internally in an internal Zoom meeting. Out of 15, 12 educators mentioned that they got to know about ki policy jaisa kuch hota hai. After these kind of discussions, earlier they are in this profession since 20 plus years, but unko abhi pata chala ki policy jaisa bhi kuch hota hai. So, I think ki aise discussions honge to people will understand that there is something called structure, there is something called policy making, and once you start interacting with people, listening to these webinars, lot of windows in your minds will open, and then I think once we have the understanding to the core of this policy, implementation will definitely take place. Kitna kahan tak is a separate question. So I will now quickly, we have just 10 minutes to go, Fatima, and I've been very generous to give everyone more than the minutes that I had mentioned in the document. So it's to Farzana ma'am now. Farzana ma'am, a question to you. There are a lot of questions in the audience, but I'll pick them afterwards. The new NEP aims to moving from content heavy to experiential. So what I've done is, Farzana ma'am, I've picked up the things which I really liked in the policy, because Indian education system always talked about and has worked as content heavy, because our children, say in grade 1, for example, if my daughter is studying in grade 1, and if I have my relatives there in US or in UK, and if I compare their studies with my daughter, I find कि मेरी बच्ची SSC में पढ़ रही है. So, and their children have a lot of experiential learning. So I think this, in this policy, there is a lot of place for this. So Farzana ma'am, kindly throw some light on this.
See, the first thing that I would like to say about it, what the NEPs tried to do is to give us some relief from this factory model of education.
True.
Mass production, hatao, and look at the potential of every child and see that every child develops, So I like the framework for that reason. The second thing is they are asking the teachers to be better trained, training institutes to improve. So we move away from the rote learning and move into an inquiry-based, project-led ecosystem, that the learning outcomes are much more, and we have a whole holistic development of a child. There is transdisciplinary education. Imagine if I don't know maths, how can I solve a physics problem? But the two teachers never talk to one another today. I have a curriculum, I have a board exam, and sorry, tumhara class, tumhara hai. But now with this new policy and the new age of collaborating, teachers collaborating together, hopefully we would be able to come with an outcome-based education framework where the higher order thinking skills, the professional skills will come in play, Gandhiji said a very nice thing for experiential learning, and which he says, learn by doing. In a simple word, learn by doing. I'm sure this learn by doing will be a stress-free education. It will be fun-filled, yet it will be very deep learning. I'll tell you, when I was in school, and even now, some of my children, as soon as the exam gets over, they say, don't ask me one more question, mom, because I finished my paper. I vomited out on the paper, now don't ask me. I want to move to that system where the child enjoys the assessment. I've enjoyed, it was challenging. I was able to put my mind to it and I was able to move on. And I use that as a foundation to move on in my life, So concept driven is much better than content heavy, which we all agree. And that should be the future curriculum of our schools. We should move from concrete to abstract. Har time class mein kya hota hai? Teacher kuch na kuch bolti hai. The child is lost. Why? Because the child wants to connect with the real world. He needs to see that, then to understand the concept that you are trying to teach, So this, if we do it in this fashion, of course, we will bring in innovation. And our children will be innovators, they'll become entrepreneurs. Why do you see many of these IIT graduates, they don't go into management and engineering career. They like to create something of their own. Why? Because they are out of the box thinkers. They've been trained like that. We need to train the minds of our young children not to be crazy about marks. So Ladakh ka bacche ko 75 mila ya Bombay ka bacche ko 95 mila. I don't care. I want to see what are the skills developed. I've been to Ladakh, sir, and I went into this, I forgot this name of this famous Ladakh guy. He's into all the interviews. I've forgotten him. On whom the Three Idiots movie was made. He has Feng Shui. Who? I forgot his name.
Wangdu Feng Shui.
Wangdu. Now his school was so awesome. Itna simple school tha. Forget all these fancy AC schools. It was a very rudimentary school. But kya padhata tha wo? Kaise padhata tha? The children were making their own solar cookers. They converted an old motor car into a lounge. You know, वो क्या क्या चीज बच्चे के पास कराता था. वो ice stupa बनाया, बच्चे ही कर रहे हैं. He is guiding them, but he is facilitating them. So that is where we need to move our children to, you know. And I'll just give you an example that you know how teaching should be. In traditional schools, and this has been happening, different types of helpers would say archaeologist. Okay, the one who digs the ground and finds out artifacts. बच्चे को क्या समझ पड़ा? वो बोला, I have heard it and I forgot it. But now if I do an experiential learning. In my school, I dig up a pot or one part of the ground and कुछ old bangle, कुछ डाल के मैं उधर रखूं, and then the next day they say, today we are going to be archaeologists, and they go and dig. And they find camera, snap. It's such a lovely experience. They will never forget what is the work of an archaeologist. So my take on this is experiential learning is the best way forward. Skills develop hoga, concepts clear hoga. And definitely what Modi wants, that we become an Atmanirbhar country. We will become. Why? Because it is going to give us those skills. And we will innovate, we'll become entrepreneurs. And why also, if we talk about the global world, now it's become a village, friends, small place. So we need to learn various languages, become multilinguals. We need to be able to think faster. Why are we doing, our engineers are doing so well in America? Why? Because of that very good base that they have got. So that is why I end my case to say, experiential learning is the way forward. It will help us, whatever level they do, 5%, 10%, 50%, every child will grow. And in experiential learning, there is nothing like one size fits all. You learn as you experiment.
Wonderfully said, Farzana ma'am. And I'll pick that word, factory model, because I think it's the correct representation of what education system does today. So thank you so much, Farzana ma'am. On to you, Fatima. A very important question. I'm sure Colonel Shekhar will be interested to answer this after you finish. The process to ensure a single curriculum across the country, Fatima. The toughest question, on to you. And I'm sure Colonel Shekhar will definitely.
We have already had a kind, we've already had a kind of chat on it, but feel free.
Okay, Harsha, we're a country that's demographically so beautifully split. And I use the word beautiful because there's been a lot of negativity around. Okay, there's beauty in the east, there's beauty in the north, there's beauty in the south, there's beauty in the west. Did we converge that? Is our narrative about that? We are at the moment on differentiation. So I am with Colonel. So sir, you don't have to disagree with me. A standardized model is not progressive. If you have to look at competitive market forces, and I keep reiterating that point, to remain progressive, you need competition, healthy competition. It cannot be about monopoly because you will stagnate. You will then just do what is put out there. Plus, our resources are different. Our IT capabilities are different. Infrastructure is different. So please don't judge me if I'm in Ladakh and I'm in Mumbai. True. And I've had a child from Chandigarh tell me my only point in the spell bee was I didn't pronounce it like the Mumbai kid did.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I'll add here, if Nelson Mandela comes and becomes a teacher in India, his accent will be questioned and people will say he's not good enough. That's how we think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we have to be realistic, Harsha. We cannot have a standardized curriculum. We have to have a differentiated approach. And why not? One size does not fit all. So why don't we allow, the resources that they are? And there's some very good schools doing what they are. Why is it that everything has to be like a Common Core? Common Core standards are for benchmark in terms of where we are as a country. common core standards are not in bringing everyone together, because we can't. We're not producing an iRobot movie. We're producing the citizens of the world who will, honestly, with our population, we should be controlling the world. So how do you nurture that? How do you empower that? By letting them be, like Farzana ma'am said, like Shekhar said, assessments have to be different. So please, this common curriculum is a beautiful thought on paper. Non-implementable, cannot happen, will not happen. It will delay progress for us as a nation. Plus, I have to understand my needs and my means. So I think we all have to work towards that. Yes, the only thing is teachers need some sort of support, and that's where I hope the private partnership happens, where all teachers are able to learn and then implement in their own way. That's my only, and I think there are lots of organizations doing very good work already. See, that's not being narrated in the media. Everyone's out to criticize. So I think somewhere, let's move away from this standard curriculum. It's kind of a wish that you blow those candles and then know that it'll never happen.
Wonderfully said, Fatima. I was just looking at a few questions if we can pick up, but we are running short of time. I think for arranging webinars for NEP, I think we should pick up one topic and talk about that particular topic for an hour. I think only then justice will be given. Otherwise, you know.
And maybe you should not have all three of us together, because we love talking.
Wonderful. So, Colonel Shekhar, it's your turn. I'm quickly
I'll quickly go through. Before you do
so the
that,
question,
please go ahead.
So the question to you is, sir, that NEP is learner-centric. So how do you look at it?
Agreed. If the answer you have to make it short, it is simple. The question is how learner-centric we want to make it when we are teachers and educators, how we want to. So I'll quickly cover some of the comments which I see. NEP implementation, Rinku Shah says, once grading comes, competition starts, display of boards, etc. Yeah, the point we have to understand is, as Fatima said, an element of competition is essential. There is no doubt about it. We require to understand that part of it. The other issue in terms of learner, the teacher, the guru of yesterday became a teacher, then became an educator, then a facilitator. My term for the teacher today, he or she has to be a learning curator. A learning curator who looks at things, information is available. How that information, how true it is in some aspects, how factual it is in a Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google Media, where the value for is what the tech companies want you to do, while education, by definition, wants you to be reflective, think through what you are doing and come up to what is a decision which you have thought through. So the technology is sometimes a challenge, although I agree with what Fatima Agarkar said, that technology is here to stay. Otherwise, we wouldn't be speaking like this today. Second aspect of it is that almost all the searches in Google, we do not go beyond the second page. 92% of us do not go beyond the second page. Hardly 3% go beyond the third or fourth page. And if you read that, the first few pages, 62% of all your searches go back to Google, where they make more money. So the question of making it learner-centric fundamentally lies with the leadership group and the teachers. And we come back to the old chestnut, how well teachers are going to be trained. 60 hours was what the previous policy said. They have made it 50 hours. Even that, in a post or present pandemic world where we get the money, etc., from is a question. And one specific rider to all my answers, since I found that all three of you are so pro policy, I thought I will wear the hat of a devil's advocate so that to make the discussion that much more interesting. So therefore, then only this conversation will have some energy. Otherwise,
Shekhar ji, you have to be the odd man out.
Yeah, I am the man in the midst of three formidable women. Do I have a choice? I don't. I ended with how I look at it in terms of how it has to be, and I'll take a cricketing metaphor. Mansoor Ali Khan Patadi became India's youngest captain in 1964 in the West Indies. Then he captained India. We were 2-0 down, and he made sure we won the next 2 test matches. We lost the last one. He retired because he said, I am not good enough. That's remarkable. And that's something from the sport which I have taken it a great deal. He said, I am a great leader, but I am not going to take my position in the team as a batsman. And please remember, this gentleman had one eye gone, and he used to see 2 balls when he was batting, and he used to take the inside ball to be a player. It's a remarkable story. Mansoor Ali Khan Patadi, if you read whatever in terms of leadership. So therefore, what I look at is there is a lot to be done. There is a lot to be learned from several other sectors. We require to go out of our existing very insular boxes academia tends to be in, integrate with whatever else we are doing. If it has to be learner-centric, you require to focus on what the learner, from home he comes to school, is he school ready or foundation ready? Ananda, Jigyasa, Sadhana, Shraddha, the Ananda of learning, the curiosity of learning, the Sadhana of learning, and then going beyond the Guru. Then we make him college ready, citizen ready, job ready, livelihood ready, life ready. It's a long process. So in that, to make him learner-centric is very specific. However, how well we do it will depend upon how good we change from our old Guru concept, celebrate September 5th, give food, and train the teachers in the right manner. Go beyond in the 4G term, August 15th and January 26th, Bharat Mata ki jai, but I don't want my son to join the army. We cannot have that. We require to make our teachers not only skillful, both academically and otherwise, but we'll have also got to find out a way to make sure that they are special. How we are able to do it, we wouldn't know, but learner-centric will happen when that happens. And along with that, one final point, 80% of our teachers are ladies. With due apologies to you, she's a mother, she's a daughter-in-law, she's a spouse. And when she gets up in the morning, there are multiple challenges she faces. And in that context, she has done a remarkable job, especially during this COVID times. We know those. So for that context, the society has also got to look at it. The MCPs have to prepare more than a cup of tea to contribute to the family, to make the teacher in the house to be a better nation builder rather than continue to be male chauvinists in the positions we are in. That's a frank statement. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Colonel Shekhar. Thank you so much. I'm very sorry that we've extended, I think, 17 minutes. We had planned for 60 minutes, but thank you, audience, for being with us. Definitely 60 minutes or 75 minutes is not enough to discuss this policy. But whatever best we could extract and whatever best understanding we could give, we've tried to do through this medium of webinar. On this note, I would really like to thank Farzana ma'am, Fatima ma'am, and Colonel Shekhar. And before we log out, the toughest task I'm going to give you all for a minute is one word for NEP. I'll start with Colonel Shekhar. One word. I'm sure Colonel Shekhar is going to be a difficult task because I can challenge you won't be able to sum it up in one word. But you have to use one word for NEP.
Progressive.
Progress. Wonderful. Farzana ma'am? You are on mute, Farzana ma'am.
Change is inevitable.
Wonderful.
3 words.
Fatima?
Empowerment.
Wonderful,
Empowerment.
wonderful.
Harsha, I just wanted to point out one of your, the participants who logged on said a very important point. Research and development in schools is now going to define it. This no government needs to tell you. This no principal needs to tell you. This you do because you want to move forward. And you don't have to have a directive. So someone else said, no, it's better to have standardized processes. Guys, no one's holding you back from doing good work. It's when you're not doing the good work that people are directing you. So think about research and development as a key cell in your schools if you really want to be a progressive school, and it doesn't matter which board you follow. I think that was a very important point Vivan made.
Yeah, wonderfully said, Fatima. And on behalf of TIE, that is the team of Ignited Educators, I take this opportunity to thank all the panelists for sharing this platform, sharing their insights and wonderful thoughts, and making all of us understand the policy in a better way. So thank you, Fatima. Thank you, Colonel Shekhar. Thank you, Farzana ma'am. It really means a lot. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.